Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Process Podcast. Isabell Wolfe,
Hello.
how you doing?
I'm great, thank you.
It's like we've been here before.
We have.
This is the second time me and Izzy have started a podcast and realised it's actually got nothing to do with Izzy. It's totally on me. But realised that, shit, we're not recording. We actually were.
45 minutes through, though.
Yeah, exactly. 45 seconds. How's your day going?
It's been really good. It's been a pretty full-on back-to-back day, and we're here now, but I'm excited. It was things that I was passionate about and really excited for the future things that we're doing, so I love days like that.
Give me a quick summary. What you've been doing?
Yeah, so this morning when I woke up, I had a lot of content stuff to put out because we have quite a bit of content going through today. I was talking with Liam for most of the morning about all of the build stuff that we're recently doing because we have all the content he needs to start launching the page, which will be on Monday. And then we came in for training, and then after training I had a meeting with our accountant just to do our financials one last time before our board meeting tomorrow. Quickly sat down with Liam again just to finalize his wording in a lot of his posts. Sat down with Tammy because she created our personal development PDF, and it was just going through that before sending it over to our design team to create that. And then I've been making a personal post that I'm going to post later today. And then also going through a lot of the TFL, which is our new 45-minute program that's coming through. So yeah, and Ant also quickly chatted with me about the merchandise stuff that he's going to be taking on. So lots of exciting things today.
And then that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah.
Like everything you've done today is all come around because of the changes we've just made.
Yeah.
So we've got loads of people with different job responsibilities, leadership roles, loads of autonomy, people given free rein to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think your role has evolved a little bit already. You know, you're doing a lot of the marketing stuff. And I've seen, you know, you really take that role, you know, by the horns and are just, you know, really showing how much knowledge you have in that area. And it's been really, really great to see. And I think, you know, anyone looking in can probably see, you know, I think at the Process Program and Coastal, we've really elevated our social media, our content creation, and we want to do so much more because I think what we've realized is we have so much great stuff that we want to share with the world. We just don't know how to share it. And it's so cool that your role is now evolving into being able to showcase the stuff that we can do here and the stuff that we know and find a way to engage the rest of the world.
Yeah, it's definitely been a huge positive, and it was the goal, like not only to relieve us of a lot of the things that we weren't necessarily enjoying doing, but freeing up time for us to work on things that are our strengths and our passions. And I think that, yes, it may be a little bit of a turmoil and teething problems right now, but I can already see that it will come to fruition in the future because we're already doing things that fire us up every day, right?
All right, we should talk about what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
So, the reason we're having this podcast is because I posted something for the Morning Chalk Up, my very first article for Morning Chalk Up.
Congratulations. It was really good.
Last week. And as expected, actually, to be honest, I didn't expect it to make that much noise. I know you said be ready. You said be ready for a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And I genuinely thought, I was like, I don't know if people are going to enjoy this at all. I don't know if it's any good. I don't know if it's what Morning Chalk Up are looking for. So I was quite nervous because I don't think that perhaps this is a lens that I view myself through, but I think I'm a better talker than I am a writer. I enjoy writing. I actually really do, but I don't think I'm that good at it. And I find it a lot harder. Like I don't get into flow states as much when I'm writing versus talking or filming. I think the backstory here was that when the Far East Throwdown happened and Ant was competing, the Morning Chalk Up had asked me to be, I can't remember what they call it, but basically someone on the ground who at the end of each day does a recap and a summary. And obviously I wasn't really on the ground. I said to them, I'm not actually there, unfortunately. But, you know, I'll be watching the whole thing. Obviously got an athlete competing and actually multiple athletes competing. And I'd love to share my thoughts on the day. It's something I love doing. I'm a bit of a nerd of the sport, and I'd love to always kind of envision myself as like a commentator. So that was a really cool opportunity. So I took that opportunity. I knew it was going to be a lot of work because I already had a lot of work managing athletes that I couldn't be with from afar. But I thought this is such a cool opportunity. When am I going to get this chance to do this again? So I did that for the 3 days. And, you know, the Morning Chalk Up had said that people really enjoyed the stuff I was doing. And they said, you know, would you be interested in contributing to the Morning Chalk Up on a more consistent basis? And I said, yeah, I'd absolutely love to. Like, I'm a massive fan of the Morning Chalk Up. I love that they're a publication that brings news on CrossFit outside of HQ, which you never know what biases are sitting in there. And it's just more of a neutral, well-rounded publication company. I don't even know that's what they actually are, but it sounds fancy. And yeah, so they asked me, would you be up for writing an article? And I was like, wow, you've never seen my writing. And I was like, I've never really, I've written blogs for the process programming and Coastal. I've done that for 14 years, but I don't really see myself as much of a writer. I enjoy writing on my Instagram and sharing thoughts and feelings and anything related to my profession and my life. But, actually being in a position to put it on a publication or a platform like the Morning Chalk Up was actually quite nerve-wracking. I was like, you sure? You've never seen me write before. They were like, no promises we're going to publish it, but, give it a go.
Yeah.
And I was like, what should I write about? They're like, we want like real things. So we want raw things. We want, storytelling. We want human to human connection. Like, we're not about just what they didn't want, which is exactly what this podcast is about, is just like educational content. Yeah. We kind of got stuck down that rabbit hole a little bit for a while. And we realized like there's plenty of other people doing that kind of stuff. We want to share the stories and the struggles and the challenges. And so I was kind of thinking, well, what can I write about? Kind of went through my Instagram to see like what are the things I talk about? What do people like hearing about? And then I thought, what better time to talk about what we're actually currently going through? Like one of the biggest changes that we've had as an organization. We've talked about it a lot in this podcast already, kind of just in little small snippets at the start of each episode. And, it's very real. It's something that's consuming my mind and my energy and my time, all of us really, a lot right now. So let's start talking about that. So that was what I said. I said, would you be open to me sharing my story of restructuring my business? He kind of said, what's it about? I said, well, basically completely getting rid of the old way we pay coaches, which is how most CrossFit gyms pay, which is a commission-based salary, and we're moving to a full-time salary. Do you think people would be interested? And he was like, not sure, but yeah, to give it a go. Let's see. It sounds like it's raw. It sounds like it's real. And, I said to him, I'm not sure what the title should be, because I know, some people are really good at clickbaity things. You want something that's going to capture people. So I said, can I just write the article? Honestly, just tell me if it's any good. If it's shit, don't have to post it. I won't be offended at all. But can I leave you to come up with the title? Because I'm not really sure. You know your listeners, your readers more than I do. And then so I would have thought when I finished the piece, I thought if I was to give this a title, it would be like my story with paying coaches. Sounds shit. It's not exciting at all. So I was interested to see what he come up with. And his, the main editor, I assume, said, should CrossFit coaches be paid a full-time salary? I think that's what it was. And I was like, wow, that's really clickbaity. Like that's going to get the people going. Yeah. And like, I was really nervous when it came out. And obviously I was like checking in at first, like kind of every hour, like, do people like this? Like, and I was trying to message him, like, do you actually think it's any good? Like, please give me some feedback. He was 15 hours behind me, so he was fast asleep. So I didn't really get any response. But then I kind of just saw the traction that was creating throughout the day, loads and loads of comments, good and bad, but I think more than anything, like more questions was needed, or more questions were being asked on the context of why we had done what we'd done. How did you guys make it work? How is this possible? Surely this isn't possible. Obviously, and people have their own opinions as to maybe something they've experienced themselves as a coach, maybe what they've experienced as an owner. Maybe there was even some people who tried it. So what I wanted to do is actually do a podcast where we share super openly about everything that's happened here, why we made the changes, how we made those changes happen, and just share this with the world. I really, really think, and I know you really think this as well, like this is the way that organizations should be thinking about potentially run their businesses. And I don't mean that to say this is the only way you can be successful, but if your goals as an organization align with what we're trying to do, and you're trying to impact people, as many people, and as well as trying to give your coaches and your team an opportunity to be sustainable and grow in the long term beyond just your coaching hours, then I really believe that this is going to be the right thing. It's going to be the best decision that we've probably made in the last 10 years. We are, full disclaimer, we are 1 month into the changes, and it's really challenging right now. There's lots of, unforeseen challenges that are popping up, but we still know, I can still see that this is 100% the right thing to do. I hope to continue to tell our story as it unfolds. And if people do have questions, of course, like I'd be more than happy to answer. I actually have had a lot of direct messages from people saying like, please tell me more. How did you do it? I'm thinking about doing it myself. And I thought, if I can just record a podcast and share everything, I can just send that podcast to all these people. And hopefully that will be at least a great way to start a conversation.
Yeah, I do think I knew when we first started doing it that it would be something that would challenge us, but as soon as you told me about it, there was no hesitation. It definitely is the right thing to do, but we knew that there would be challenges and obstacles through it. There will continue to be learning curves. I don't think it'll ever be the perfect model, but I also knew that it was something that needs to happen in this industry, and that while we continue on what we want to do with ourselves in this business, which is be the pioneers of change and to create a more beautiful world than what is currently is, like, I know that we need to be continuously sharing these stories and, like you said, completely honest with everything that we faced, everything that we're currently facing, and all the things that we're unhesitant and uncertain about, right? But hopefully at the end of this, maybe in a year from now when we do another podcast reflecting on our last year, it'll only be positive news that came out of this change. And if it's not, it was opportunities for learning and for growth, right? But just going back on storytelling, like the article, when you sent it to me to look at, I had barely any edits. It was like, and I think that's what I keep encouraging, and I know you keep encouraging everyone who's creating content, is like, stop focusing on solely educational information and just tell your story, because that's what people are going to connect to, and that comes easy. That writing was so easy for you because you were just sharing your experiences, and like you experienced, everyone can resonate with what you're going through, and that is more useful information than just stuff that you can find off of a textbook or off of someone else's post. And what I love about the Morning Chalk-Up's question or for the title is not that it was clickbait, but that it was a question. And I think that's something that I've been telling a lot of our staff, is that using human words that are relatable for people to be like, oh yeah, I do feel that way, or oh yeah, why aren't we doing that, or that's exactly how I feel. Like, that's how you make something that could be just seminar type of vibe into something that's actually then more personal and relatable, right? So I think we're all moving towards that kind of marketing, and it's just going to change everything, just like what hopefully we're going to talk about today will change the fitness industry and the careers, and actually have fitness be a career that people take seriously, not just as something you drop out of school and pursue, right?
Yeah. And it's like, I think going back to storytelling, so I want to tell the story. Some people would say, like, why would you show all your cards?
Yeah.
Like, this is something that's like, you guys have pioneered, and like, it's going to be a massive advantage to you as a business. But it's like, we want everyone to succeed in the fitness industry. Like, there are plenty of people on this planet, all of which really need help.
Yep.
And, you know, if we can rally together and we can level up our game, you know, as fitness providers, whatever sector you're in, you know, that's only going to positively impact the world. There's always going to be plenty of people to go around for everyone. So I want to share, and I hope that this, you know, these kind of conversations spark conversations from others that have tried other things that maybe we can learn from as well. You know, by no means are we like redefining the fitness industry. Yeah. We're just trying something new. We want to share our story with the world in the hope that it can spark conversation and perhaps influence others to maybe try something similar.
Yeah. And I think that's super important for everyone to understand, it was also important for our staff to understand, because I think that was one of our first barriers when people had to shift away from selfish intentions to now collective intentions. And that's a big reason for this shift in salary pay as well. And the reason why we want to share things is because when we redefined our mission statement, which we'll talk about later, is like, we realized that we weren't making the most impact. And like, through sharing this, we are going to create impact, a ripple effect more than we could have ever done by keeping it to ourselves. And what's important to know is that there's enough resources in this world for everyone to be successful. Like, we shouldn't be keeping these things to ourselves. And I think just encourage everyone to share. Like, there's enough out there for all of us. Right?
Yes. Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah.
So, like I said, so many of the questions that people had, or the comments on the article that I posted, and I had a 1,000-word limit, by the way. Yeah. And to try to tell a 14-year story in 1,000 words was actually one of the biggest challenges in itself. And then when I first just like splurged, just wrote all my thoughts down, it was almost 2,000 words, and I was like, holy shit, I've got to half this and make it good. Yeah. So I think what people needed was more context. You know, like, why did we arrive at this point where we decided to make this crazy change and make this, you know, venture into the unknown? So that's what we're going to start with. And I think the first thing we should probably start with, and we talked about this in depth on so many episodes, but the very first ever podcast episode was basically sharing my story. That was my story as a person, but also my story with Coastal Fitness. But I think a backstory is super important. And I touched on this a bit in the article, but essentially how Coastal Fitness started almost 14 years ago. It's our 14-year birthday in November, by the way.
Wow,
Gotta do something big. It started with just me by myself. I was a sole proprietor. That means like I was the only owner of the business, and I was also the only person in the business. So I was personal training people, coaching people in parks, driving around in my 1997 Volkswagen with the Bosu ball, loads of bands in the back, loads of fake TRXs from China, and just coaching people. And it was amazing. My overheads were so small. The only fees I had to pay were the personal training studio fees and my petrol, my car, and every now and then I'd buy some new equipment, pay for my website hosting, and buy myself a uniform. That was basically all my costs. And so what I was paying myself at that point in time, actually the first year of business, I didn't pay myself anything. And the reason being, I was really lucky that I was also playing rugby at the same time, and I was able to get a small salary from my rugby. So I basically said, right, the rugby I get, the salary I get from my rugby will pay for me to live, will pay for my rent. When I was actually living with my parents at the time, but eventually moved out after about half a year, pay for my rent, pay for my daily expenses. Everything I earn in the business is just going to go back into the business account, and I'll reinvest back into, things like equipment and just all the things I need as a business. Fast forward a year, and I was at the point where I needed to bring on staff. I had no more hours in my day. I was fully booked, couldn't get any more clients, was starting to turn people away. So I had Ant, my brother, and one of my really close friends who'd been personal training in Canada. They moved back to Hong Kong pretty much at the same time, and had seen what I was creating with Coastal Fitness, said, can we be a part of it? So this was the first time I actually had to think about, okay, how do I pay these people? So I remember speaking to my parents, like, how do I pay them? And they just said, well, like, you should be paying yourself, which is a commission-based salary. Like whatever hour, if you charge your client $1,000, let's say Hong Kong dollars, you take 50%, you take 500, the business takes 500. I'm like, that makes total sense. So they were like, you got to start paying yourself as well, Ed. So I was like, okay, well, I'll do this. Essentially, we're all going to be doing the same thing. We're all going to be coaching people. Yes, I've got some other job responsibilities outside of that, like running the business, like the marketing, like handling the emails, doing the accounting, and all the other stuff that you need. Obviously, the other job responsibilities weren't so great then, because it was just basically managing the payroll for my staff and making sure they got paid. So essentially, that's how we started. Commission-based salary. And essentially, that stayed as it was for the next, until we made this change a month ago, 13 and a half years. And there was the biggest, the thing that changed, the only change that ever happened, I guess there was two changes that happened. The change came with me about a year and a half ago, where I had gotten to the point, and this was like the final straw that broke the camel's back, which was what I had realized, that I had continued to pay myself a commission-based salary. But I knew as the business grew and grew and grew, I needed to do more of actually growing the business, building a team, looking after people, thinking about the future, versus just spending all my time coaching people. And so I remember speaking to my parents are on our shareholder. We have a group of shareholders. We have a few small owners of this business. I'm the majority shareholder, and I have two directors, which are my parents. They actually don't have any shareholders in the business, but I've asked them to be a part of our board meetings because they're quite savvy business people, and it's nice to have a neutral eye. Sometimes come in, look at your books, and just call you out on your shit, which is what they're really good at. And so, I had, I guess, pleaded my case for a really long time to say, guys, like, this business isn't growing, and more importantly, like, I'm burning out for the 100th time in my career. Like, I know there's so much more that I need to be doing, but at the end of the day, if I keep on stepping away from my clients, I'm not going to be able to afford my rent. And that was genuinely where it was going. It was like, so I was basically stuck. It's like, I've got to keep on coaching people to pay my rent and to have the money in the bank account that I need to pay my mortgage. But at the same time, my time needs to be going to other things outside of coaching. And so I struggled with that for a really long time. And, in fairness to them, they would say, but Ed, you coach the most hours at the gym. If you start relinquishing your hours, the business stops making money. We can't afford your fixed salary. And obviously, like, it's a vicious cycle. It's kind of a catch-22. What I was saying was that I need to be able to build other coaches to be able to do my job just as well, maybe even better than me. Anyway, so what I did, I basically said, right, we're at loggerheads here. We're not progressing. So I'm just going to do all the extra work, hopefully at some point I can prove to them what I can do if I put more time towards other things. So essentially I took, over a 2-year period, a bit of a pay cut. I started letting go of some of my clients, relinquishing some of my hours, and started putting more time into other things. I think in that really short time we saw loads of growth. Like we saw loads of growth in, I think, myself as a leader. I was able to just manage people better. The more I learned, the more I read, the more I actually had time to think about how I could be a better person and help people more. And obviously things like the process programming, you know, that was something that was kind of born almost 3 years ago now. That's also crazy. But, you know, putting more time and energy towards that, and then seeing revenue come in through that, which was like, we're actually making revenue outside of the 4 walls of Coastal Fitness right now. And at that point, it was kind of like, okay, there is some merit to this. Let's give you a fixed salary. And as a board, we all agreed, okay, I think it's time. Ed's kind of proved himself now. And I think, you know, for listeners, like, it took me 13 years. And, you know, I think a lot of people will say, but you're the boss of the company, why didn't you just make that call? There's a lot more to that. There's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of not knowing how the hell to do things differently. You know, I've always been a leader that felt that people respected me because I was in the trenches with them, right, doing the dirty work. And I thought that's what people wanted to see from the leader. But actually, the more and more I spoke to my team and started to read and learn, that's not what people wanted. They needed someone to lead them, to give them opportunities to grow beyond just coaching hours. And so that is like the big first changing point for me. It was like finally being paid a fixed salary for myself, removing the burden of worrying about, you know, paying rent, not having to worry now about having to hit a certain number of hours with my clients every month, being able to actually do things that I really, really loved doing, and to have the time, creativity, and freedom to actually do those things. I think a little side note to all this is our operations team, yourself and 3 other staff, had always been on a fixed salary. And they were, for the most part, quite happy, doing really good work, not having to stress about the same things that the coaching team was having to stress about. And so I'd seen that, you know, I wasn't completely oblivious to the whole idea of fixed salaries, just hadn't applied it to the coaching team yet. And so that was kind of like my first introduction to fixed salaries. I'm doing a lot of talking. Jump in. Have you got thoughts, questions? You want to interject?
Definitely. I think, well, obviously I've only been here for 3 years now in November, but I do think I think you're not giving Coastal enough credit in the sense that even having a full operations team is something that a lot of people in this industry don't even have. So I've worked in a couple other gyms in the Philippines before I moved out here. And when I've traveled even to Barcelona and Taiwan and visit my sister in the States, like, you have probably one person on your team who does all sorts of operations. And what was great when I came to Coastal was that you had, well, one of the things we did together was created also a full-time operations staff, whereas before we would have part-time front desk staffs. But you had a full-time general manager, you had an operations manager, which when I first came I thought was a bit much. But now that we're here, I realize the necessity of it. And so that was already a huge game changer and pioneer in why I think Coastal was so successful. But then when I came, and together we decided that we wanted to create the process programming, right? I think that is where we probably saw that what you had and what we had wasn't enough, because I really came on board to start this online program and to upgrade the marketing and branding for you to now have a service beyond just this brick and mortar. And we realized that, yes, I have the knowledge in marketing and website and branding and all that kind of stuff, but I still needed you, because you were the product and you were the programmer and you were everything else, and you would only give me time when you had time, which was like never. It was like 1 hour once a week, and we were stagnant. Like we soared when we took off, and then there was no improvement at all. And yes, we had unfortunate situations of COVID and stuff like that, but I do think that helped us grow even more. And I think that's where we saw the most frustrations, and I saw the most frustrations, because every day I would tell you, Ed, I need more time, Ed, I need more time. And that just wasn't happening, because you're like, I have clients, I have meetings, I have this, I have that, and nothing was happening. And I think my frustrations as well then became your frustrations, because I just kept telling you, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, and like none of it was actually happening. And so it was kind of a fight against everybody else to prove that an online business could be extremely successful, right? And then I think that is when now I saw the most growth after a long stagnant period of time, is when, number one, you fixed your schedule so that you had days of where you could just put in good work doing things outside of your coaching hours, but also when you got paid a fixed salary. Not only, like, I don't think the financial burden affected you at all. I don't think you've ever been monetarily driven. It was just as long as you knew you had the security to get by, that's all that mattered. But a huge upgrade was in yourself. Like in the last year, I would say you've completely grown as a leader and as a manager, and like we're still working on loads of things, but you've also created a team that's stronger than it's ever been, because now you have the time to sit down with people, you have the time to have hard conversations and to do personal development with each of us. But above all of that is like you've had the time to focus on products outside of just your coaching hour and people and building relationships outside of that. And I think that's what's, when we saw that and we actually took time to reflect, which we probably should have done earlier, and look back on that. And that was the catalyst for your growth as a person and in your profession. We were like, everybody else needs that. And I think that's what really kicked it all off.
You telling that story, just reminded me that the thing that gave me the space and time in the first place was actually COVID.
Yeah.
And it was like when the gym got shut down the very first time, it felt like for the first time at this point, 12 years, I had time. I was like, I can't coach people right now. I'm not allowed to. And I'm like, this is my time to do all the things that I wanted to do that I haven't had the time to do. Let's do it. And we just kind of went as a team, like full steam ahead, produced so much, and then it was like the gym opened again and suddenly everything went on pause.
We looked back and we had the most amount of subscribers on our online program and all across the board when we were closed, because all of us were just 100% fully focused on that task. And like you said, as soon as the gym opened, everything else went back to the back burner, because everyone was just concerned about their own hours and earning money for themselves rather than the betterment of the business, right?
Yeah, and I say it all the time, but I'm always going to look back on COVID years and be so thankful. Give me that forced time and space to think, made me realize like I need to make this a part of my everyday. So where do we go? We talked about the path structure and the payment methods. I think probably talking about the mission statement is probably something we should talk about now. Forever, really until COVID happened, the goal has always been Coastal Fitness. Like we need to make this gym, these four walls, this brick and mortar, profitable. And that alone is really hard. I think a lot of people look at Coastal and see it as like this amazing business that's, been alive for over 10 years, has a really sexy brand, has lots of clients, has a great team. But I want to be super honest and say that like financially, it has been hard from day one. We're in Hong Kong where real estate is by far the most expensive. Actually, I think it's in the top 3 and repeatedly in the top 3 in the world, maybe even number 1 right now. And opening a business, a gym business, like has always been said by everyone, like don't do it. Do it anywhere else in the world other than Hong Kong. And so that has been our biggest obstacle from a money making standpoint. Like being here has been hard. I know that if we were to be anywhere else in the world, our profit margins would be double, triple, quadruple, sometimes tenfold. And so when people look at our prices and they go, wow, like that is expensive. Our prices are still not relative to what we pay in real estate, in rent every month.
I'd like to put that into perspective for people who, a lot of people say that our rates are really expensive, but our capacity right now is 180 group class members. 150 of those members pay just our rent. So I think if we put that into perspective of right now, we're not even operating at 150 members. We need to find other sources of revenue just to cover our rent. This is not even including salaries at all, or management fees, electricity fees, any other expense, Wi-Fi, all water, like that's it. And I think that's a huge perspective to put things on, is like, it's expensive.
Yeah. And I think, the takeaway message here is that just focusing on your gym and trying to be profitable in your gym doesn't really work here. Like it doesn't really work. And so that is what's forced us over the years. We tried everything. We felt like we tried everything. Like even when we had a coaching team of 10 people and every coach was at capacity, pumping out 100 plus hours of coaching a month, we were still barely in the green. Yeah.
So we did a huge presentation for our team just to allow everybody to have a greater, because I think something that we greatly learned from it is that we never shared financial information with our team. We kind of held that burden amongst ourselves and just...
we painted this picture that everything was great.
To all of our staff. And they thought because they were getting cushy salaries at the end of every month that the business must be thriving. It must be great. And that was probably something that we had to actually just really shine the light on, being like, it's not just because you're doing great doesn't mean the business is doing great. Like you said, when all 10 coaches were at full capacity earning pretty great checks at the end of the day, we were still profitable by 19,000 Hong Kong dollars.
On a good month.
That was the best month. We were at full capacity and all our coaches were full. That's not a profit.
And I think some context for listeners, because, you know, there are some gyms around the world who I know, you know, if they can have 60 members, they are profitable already. And for those people, perhaps this podcast and the changes that we're making are not applicable to you, because you can actually have a very profitable business just with 60 members, running a few group classes a day with a few members of staff, and that might be fine for you. I guess that the overarching, the more important part of all of this is that, like you said, I've never been financially driven. Like, I want to ensure that I'm comfortable and I'm getting enough to cover my costs and hopefully have a little bit in the bank. But like, the mission for us is so much more than profitability. It's so much more than money. It's actually about impact. And we have it on our wall. You know, originally our mission was to positively impact people's ability to live, perform, compete. That's evolved now. And, you know, our mission now is to help athletes, coaches and businesses find a sustainable way to grow. Like, we're all about the sustainability piece. And when we define that, you know, and that definition came from essentially 13 years of experience. It's like, we don't just want to impact people. Like, we have a way that we want to impact people, and it's like, it's eyes in a long game. We want to maximize people's health span. We want them to be functioning right until the day that they die. And we now will also identify that we were helping serve 3 different types of people. The athletes, you know, that's the people we train here at Coastal, but it's also the individual subscribers that we have on the process programming. Affiliates, you know, we're here now helping businesses. That's something that's happened over COVID. Like, I never thought I'd be in a position. I don't think you ever thought you'd be in a position where you were mentoring and helping other businesses. But, you know, I've experienced so much in my 14 years of running a business that I feel like every single thing I speak to other business owners about, I've experienced at some point. And I didn't know until I started speaking to other business owners, like, holy shit, I can actually help these people. I have so much more to give than I think I do. And then the last one is helping coaches. The way that we do that right now is just kind of through our social media platforms and sharing educational content. Is something I love doing, but we're actually building courses now. We're going to build some individual and group coaching courses that we're going to share with the world and help level up coaches. But, you know, when you listen to that mission statement, it's like, we're trying to impact as many people in these 3 prongs. Can we do that in our gym? You know, we know that when our gym's at capacity, we're serving 250 people. Are we really putting ourselves out there to help the world? And I think that's what one of the biggest motivators for the process program was. It's like, you know, the online space allows us to have infinite impact, and we got to use this opportunity now. You know, we've created this platform, the process program at the start of COVID, which started all with a free program. Let's not forget that. Like, we just put a free program out to try and help the world. Yeah. And we built this kind of following that's slowly starting to grow. Like, let's use this. Like, we can find ways to recreate what we've done here and share it with the world. And which is why, like, our new mission statement was born. And when we wrote that mission statement down, we're like, it can't just be about Coastal anymore. Like, not only do we know that Coastal by itself is not a profitable business and it's not going to allow us to have the futures that we want, but secondly, it's not going to allow us to actually impact as many lives as we can. Like, we want more. And I think context, again, is so important, because not every gym owner wants to impact lives. Some people open gyms just like to have their own playgrounds, to make money for themselves, make money for their team, but that's it. And that's totally fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I have no idea where this has come from, but for me, it's always been about, I've got this potential. I want to maximize this potential. I've got this, maybe it's a gift, but I have this calling and I want to achieve as much as I possibly can. I don't know why. You know, I've spoken to some other business owners on this podcast recently, and they're kind of similar minded. We're always pushing to grow and grow and grow. And I asked them, I was like, when is enough enough? Because I never know when enough is enough. But when you put out a statement to say you want to, you know, impact as many lives as possible, then I'm like, holy shit, we've just got to keep on going.
Yeah. And I think just to bring it back is like, we've always had that belief of that we wanted to do more than we could in these 4 walls. We just never knew how to make it happen. And like you said, I think COVID was a blessing in the sense that we were forced to look outside because we were closed. We weren't making any money. Like, how could we continue to pay our rent and pay all our staff and keep everyone on board? And it was, well, it's an online business. It's an online world. Let's get into that. And so it enabled us to actually, like you said, put time and effort into that. But then when we actually had a huge brainstorm meeting about what we were doing and who we were. And like you said, we defined those avenues that we knew we could create the most impact. We then realized that we didn't have a team or the resources in order to do any of that. And then I guess that brings it back to what we thought, how can we use what we have and who we have and enable them to have the time and energy to create all of these avenues. Not only will it have a direct financial impact to then increase our profit, but more importantly, it will even do our mission statement for our people, which is provide actual careers for coaches. And I think that's always what I go back to is like, do you want to be coaching when you're 70 years old? Like just one-on-one out and making sure your paycheck is a direct correlation to the hour of work that you put in, right? So it's like we were in both ways to this. Is like, yes, it's going to help the business, but it's going to help our people and provide them with opportunities that they wouldn't get elsewhere. And I think that's really how we came up with the structure of everything that we were doing that we're going to talk about now. And I think most important out of all of it, and what we have to continuously remind ourselves and our coaches, even because it's not smooth sailing, like you said, is that what our mission is now. And it's like, it is to not just give the company more profit, but it is to reach the most amount of people. And we want to use what you're passionate about and what you're good at in order to achieve those things, because we do believe that we have all of the resources that we need here. We just need to provide people the space to be creative and the people the space to learn and to find ways to communicate with people, right?
Well, I'd realized that when I moved myself into the fixed salary, it was amazing. But we had still a team of 15 people and we had 2 people, yourself and myself, who are now creating outside of just a coaching hour. And bear in mind, I was still coaching a lot of hours at this point in time.
And everybody was doing all of the stuff we were doing for the process for free. I think that's like, we look back on it all the time, and that we were very lucky that with what we have created so far, it was people doing it part-time out of the goodness of their hearts whenever they had time. And it's an amazing product right now, but it's stagnant. And so that's why for anybody in any business looking for more than what they have, you need to be willing to make some sacrifices in order to push forward to create more. And I think that's probably the hardest part of this transition, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think, going back to how I felt when I moved to a fixed salary, it was like, wow, I have now a bit more time to be able to do these other things. And then pretty quickly, I had run out of time. So, I'd created these, extra revenue sources, these new businesses with the help of yourself. But it got to a point where to move forward, to continue to grow, there needed to be another me. And that was where I hit that next crossroads, which was like, how can we make this happen for everyone else? If I've experienced this amazing journey in the last couple of years, having been where all my coaches are right now, because I could see the old me from 2 years ago in all of my coaches, continuing to grind every day, exchanging their time for money, and, not having any energy to do anything else other than just a coaching hour. And, at the end of a long day of coaching, which is, a pretty challenging job, you've got 30 minutes an hour here to try to create quality work. It just doesn't really happen. And so I think that's where the next crossroad was, which was came to you and said, Izzy, I know we've got a million things on our plate right now, but what do you think about fixed salaries? And how can I create these opportunities? How can we create these opportunities for the rest of the team that I've created for myself? And I guess that's where, we came to this next thing.
Yeah. So obviously through all of this backstory that we just went through, in order to create time and space and energy for people, we realized that what was missing was giving people this time. And if everybody was just solely working for themselves and solely working for their hour, we could never expect people to give us more, and we could never expect to grow. So we decided that after having conversations and with like Ollie Marchon and other people who have made this transition themselves and seeking knowledge outside of ourselves, because we didn't know all the answers, we then agreed that it actually was the best thing, because now we needed to create, like you said, more of you. We needed more managers, we needed more leaders, we needed more forward thinkers and creative thinkers in our business in order to do things that you and I were unable and limited to do, because we're just 2 people. We don't have all the answers. We need other people on our team who do have the answers.
And I want to provide some context here for people, because it's not like we just went from taking people who were just coaching and suddenly said, tomorrow you're going to be a leader. What these people who are now in leadership positions since making the changes showed before the change was an interest in being leaders, was they showcased that they had talents outside of coaching, and they showcased that those talents were also things they loved doing. And so what we started to realize was that we have a really talented team of people here that can do so much more than just coach an hour. And there's nothing, I don't want to discredit coaching here, because coaching is a craft that takes years and years to fine tune. And like, to be honest, like you can infinitely get better. You don't hit a ceiling in coaching where you're just too good and you can't progress anymore. But at the same time, you know, over the last few years, we've built an incredible apprenticeship system. We've built this system that can educate someone with no coaching experience and take them to the point where we would regard them as a pretty high level coach when we look at the industry average. And so it's like, well, these other people who've been in the game now for 5, 8, 10 years, some of our team members have got all these other amazing talents, but they're still bound to just coaching.
Yep.
And I know, you know, when we look at, you know, when we think about the human species, like we crave complexity, we crave challenge, you know, so even if you're a great coach and even if your clients love you and even if you're pulling in a good paycheck, why do people still leave the coaching industry? And that can be said for any industry, you know, because people don't feel challenged anymore and they want to take on more responsibility. And most importantly, they want to feel like they're contributing to something greater. And when and this is just what I think, you know, when you're just coaching that one person every day, you're impacting that life. But are you really contributing to something bigger than just that person? I think that's something that's so important. People do crave that. And so, you know, acknowledging those things, we had this team of people who'd proved themselves. They'd done voluntary work to create more than just serving their clients. They had expressed through lots of conversations. We spent weeks just sitting down with people being like, what do you love? Like, this is what I think you love, but what do you love? What do you really want to do? If you could just choose, just tell me, like, what would you love to be doing every single day? And when we sat down with our more senior coaches, yeah, coaching was a part of it, but it wasn't the only thing. You know, we had some of our coaches who loved running events. We had people who loved being mentors and educating other coaches. We had some who wanted to be like the head programmers for program. We had people who had interest in like marketing. And it was like, wow, we've got these people they can offer us so much more as a company. We just need to make this happen now.
Yeah, and like it's also important to note for like gym owners out there is like coaching is not the only way to make money. If you're just solely focused on coaching and the amount of clients you can get in, then you're limited to just the number of clients you can fit through the door and the number of clients your coaches can take, right? And so that was a challenge for us, is to find the talents of our team and how can we not only provide them with progression and challenge and growth that they can see themselves excelling beyond, because right now their limit to earn is the cap of the number of people they can take every day. And if they're willing to work 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's all the time we have in our lives.
The only growth opportunities we gave them was, okay, after a year or two, we'll increase your by
like a few dollars.
Yeah, we'll increase your hourly rate by $100 Hong Kong.
And so eventually we have a top tier. That's what you get capped on. And like you said, that's just not in our nature, or that's not in the nature of the people we want in our business, who are just comfortable being comfortable. And so we then challenge people to tell us, well, what are your passions and how can we create that in our business to not only better the business but to better yourself, right? And so it was, like you said, lots of long conversations of talking to each of our team, being like, okay, well, you like running events, how can we now create that in our business? Oh, you like merchandise, how can we do that in our business? Oh, you want nutrition and lifestyle, that's not something we offer now, how can we do it, right? So I think that was the next challenging step that we encourage everyone within their business to do, which is look at your employees, talk to them, seek what they love to do and their passions, and how can you work together to make that happen, which is what we did next when we decided that we wanted to move to fixed salaries, right?
Yeah. So one of the first things we did was we basically sat the team down and we presented everything. We created this presentation. I have to be honest, it wasn't the first thing we did. Yeah. We actually went about it the wrong way. What we did, and this is my fault, because when I get a new idea, I just get so fucking excited. I want to tell the world. Yeah. And I can't keep things to myself. I wanted to sit down with each coach and tell them about what was happening. But what really needed to happen was, as a collective, because we know that this big change is now, it's forcing people to not think just about themselves, but it's about thinking about the collective. And we needed to present to the collective and say that if we're going to get ourselves and build this amazing future, you know, achieve this amazing mission, you know, bring the company out of, you know, into healthier financial times. Like, we need to pull together as a team, and it can't just be individuals looking after their own paychecks now, trying to work more hours than their colleagues. That's not a team anymore. You know, I think with the old structure, like, I think we created an amazing team. We did as best as we could
with that situation,
with the structure that we had. And I know that's something that a lot of other gyms around the world struggle with. So the first thing we did, like, we sat down over in a coffee shop and we talked about our vision. What do we really, what was that crazy lofty goal that we want to achieve as an organization? And we wrote down a 1 year and a 3 year and a 5 year vision for Coastal Fitness and the process programming. And I'll be honest, that's the first time in owning a business for 13 years that I've ever created a 1, 3, 5 year vision. People have asked me forever, like, what is your 1, 3, 5 year vision? I'm like, I don't know. What I'm doing right now, I love. So let's just see where it takes me. And that has genuinely been like the way I felt about it. But I felt this time, like, if we're going to create change and we're going to present the challenges that we're faced with, I need to also present something lofty, something that we can all aim to strive towards. And there were some crazy things in there. Like, my 5 year vision still genuinely is like, I want to have a beautiful facility that's holistic. It has functional medicine. It has, healthcare specialists like physiotherapists, chiropractors, massage therapists. I want to have a sports field. I want a swimming pool. I want to be in some destination where it's hot most of the year. And, our athletes, subscribers, coaches, businesses can travel to us and have a bloody great time, whilst also, engaging and fostering and building relationships. Like, that's 100% my vision. And it's like, I put that up there and said, this is what our facility is going to look like. This is what our course is going to look like. This is how many subscribers we're going to have. This is how many affiliates we're going to work with. And basically, we just kind of worked back from there. And I've kind of basically, that working back from the target in the same way that we do programming, you set your goal, your destination, you work back from there, brought us back to the present. And the present was, we are not going to achieve any of this if we can continue to do what we're doing right now. Yeah. And we shared the financials. We shared everything. We shared the fact that if the gym had been forced to close for 2 more weeks, Coastal Fitness would have been bust. Yeah. And that's a really hard thing to actually say, even on this podcast. But like, genuinely, if the government had us closed for 2 more weeks, we would have actually had no more money in the bank. We've been so fortunate we've been able to pay our staff, pay ourselves throughout the entire time. Didn't have to let go of any of our staff. But it was like at a cost. And those are some of the most stressful times, because we were looking at those figures each week being like, please, Hong Kong government, like, open us. Yeah. Or like, we're going to have to go for the very first time, apply for help somewhere else. I'm not going to ever let this business go down, was what I was thinking. But like, I never thought I'd be in this situation after 14 years of running what I thought was a good business, that we're going to be in a position where we need financial support to help us survive. Yeah.
And I think, like we said, you and I talk about our vision and our goals all the time as the two of us. And I think just like we learned that we should be sharing financial information with the team, we said we also need to be sharing our vision and the goals with the team. Because yes, it's all good and well that you and I know where we want to go, but if the people who are actually driving our business and being the workhorse of a business don't know, and they're just working on a day-to-day basis, they won't be as committed and bought into it. And so that's why I think that presentation was so powerful, because we finally gave something for everyone to strive towards that we all believed in. But that conversation wasn't easy. And I think that's something we need to be very honest on with everybody who's wanting to pursue something like this, is like, you won't necessarily always have the right people in your team to get you where you want to go, right? And that conversation wasn't easy because, and I completely understand, is that people are used to having full control of their own salary, and how on a commission-based salary, you know how many hours you have to work in order to get the paycheck that you want. If you wanted to buy something, if you wanted to save, if you wanted to work less, like, you had that kind of flexibility to then work that. And now we were completely taking away the control of your own salary and being like, well, this is your fixed salary. Yes, it does provide security and safety, but it may not be the number that you aim to hit every month, right? And yes, we had people who were fully bought into the mission and completely want to achieve what we want to achieve as a collective, but we still had to convince people further that this isn't any more about your financial benefit. And we needed to explain just how you and I understand that life isn't fulfilling if you're solely focused on financials, and that we needed to be like, we're actually providing you opportunities beyond your coaching hour. We're providing you an opportunity to be a manager, which you would never have in just a coaching job. We're providing you with an opportunity to create your own products, to create your own brand, to run a team, to do what you love doing. And we were trying to sell that more than a paycheck, which was probably the hardest thing. And just to go back to everything that we believe in, is that you need to focus on people, and sometimes as a person you need to focus on human characteristics rather than financial gain as well.
Yeah, when we did that presentation, I think we had a divide in our team. And I think for other people who are going to do this, like, you're probably going to have that divide as well. We had half the team, and most of these people were more experienced coaches who've been in the industry for a long time, who were basically saying, yes, this is like 100% what I need. I need that breakaway from just coaching. I have other things I can bring to the table and I love doing. And this is a company who's going to reward me for doing those things.
Yeah, like they've been working for years just running
coaching
after that paycheck because that's it. And they start thinking, well, I'm getting a bit older now. How does this work out if I want to start a family, if I want to start those kinds? So I think
if I want to go on holiday and not worry about earning money.
If I get sick, if COVID happens again, like all of these things, where when you're a more seasoned and experienced coach within the industry, which is when coaches usually switch and leave the fitness industry because they go to this turning point, right?
Yeah, so those people, it was not hard to convince.
Yeah.
The hard challenges with those people was the fact that when we actually presented their contracts, most of them would have to take a bit of a pay cut based on what they were earning on commission, but we'll talk about that later. The other half was the fact that, hang on a minute, I'm earning good money right now, and you're telling me that I'm going to have a ceiling on how much money I could make by being on a fixed salary. That doesn't sit well with me. And the way that we responded to those people was like, I totally understand. It's hard. It's change. Change is always hard. But at the end of the day, if I keep on paying you the way I am, this business is not going to exist. And that was a harsh reality of all of it. It was like, we just couldn't continue doing what we were doing more than anything else. Like, the business will no longer exist. You will have no job. There'll be no Coastal Fitness. And I said, that's terrible. And trust me, that hurts me more than anyone else as a person, you know, who's created this thing, has been at the realm, sorry. So it was easy when we put it in black and white. It was like, there just is no other option. You guys can see it now. We painted the picture. We can't go back to those ways. Something has to change. Where do we go now?
Yeah, and I think, just to reiterate, because I don't think we've actually talked about it briefly, is that, and I think every gym owner, well, I don't know if every, but most people within our industry face, is that you can calculate how much you're going to earn every month just by going by how many members you can walk through the door and how many hours your coaches can coach. And you can calculate how much expense you have each month. And whatever you subtract those two numbers by is your profit. And that's a pretty sad, in my opinion, reality of just like knowing that this is it. I've made this business and there's no growth. This is the amount of money that I can make, and this is the amount of impact that I can create, right? And I think when we say that there was no other option, it's because we didn't like that option. Like you keep saying, if you're happy with that and you're happy being a gym owner that just
serves
you're paying rent and
you
you serve the people you have in your doors, then I don't necessarily recommend this change in structure for you. But if you're people like us who want more out of life and want to create as much change as we can and meet as many people as we can, then this is why we said there's no other option. It's like, we're no longer just a gym that believes in serving one person for 1 hour in exchange for money. So I guess we can now move into, now we've gone through the change and the rough idea of how we came into the structure. I think we should talk about the transition period and how we actually created these positions and how we roughly came up with the salaries and what is required now of the people in order to us to even pay their salaries. I think that's probably the biggest question, is like, how do you afford to pay people's fixed salaries?
Okay. So what we did, we created essentially levels. Now, we always had a level system with personal trainers, but it wasn't clear. There was a lot of gray. And essentially what it said was like, you know, based on, you know, the consistency of how well you executed your job, things like referrals, how many years in the industry, how many certifications you had, how many years you've been with Coastal Fitness, you have this opportunity to climb up the ladder as a personal trainer. But all that really meant was that as you jumped a ladder, you climbed a level, your personal training hour would increase. So the fee that you would charge your client would increase, let's say 5 or 10%, which means that you, on a commission-based salary, would take 5 or 10% more of your salary. But that's great. But there's going to be a ceiling on that, because we can't continue to just increase people's personal training hours, because at some point clients aren't going to pay that money because it's just astronomical. So there was always going to be a ceiling. Funny story there is that started with 3 levels. And by the end of it, we had like 7 levels. It was like 4, 3A, 3B, 2A. And it was just ridiculous. I ended up having to keep on creating new levels as we had more staff joining, realizing that the disparity between our best coaches and our newest coaches was just growing and growing. So we had to create more levels.
And I think what I disliked the most about that system was that you were solely rewarding the person's ability to coach.
Yes.
And I think like with our values that we have and the things that we were wanting to achieve is that just didn't align with us. Like we would always sit down and we didn't have a black and white system to it. It would just be like, well, they're really capable of programming this and really good at coaching that. But we would be like, but we actually don't need that in our gym. All of our coaches are more than capable to coach and coach. What we're actually looking for is people's ability to be a good person, to be a good leader, to be able to do other things outside of the hour willingly, right? And I think that was also a huge spur for us because we were like, we have all these questions up in the air. What actually solves this? And that goes back now to these new levels that we've created.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. So we have 4 levels now. Basically at level 4, we should probably work backwards. Level 4 is essentially myself. So, someone who is, in charge of, steering the direction of the business. You're in some organizations, they'll call it a CEO, but essentially you have multiple job responsibilities, generally speaking, more than 3. And, you're kind of the visionary, you're running the ship. There's leadership responsibilities, there's management responsibilities of the overall organization. When you work down to level 3 coaches now have 2 or more responsibilities. Now, when we talk about responsibilities, we're talking about, it's not necessarily things like cleaning the gym. We have a fantastic cleaner who does that for us, but it's basically management responsibilities, which we kind of define as, you're gonna have to help me here, but like taking charge of a training program and being the head programmer for that, taking charge of a class or a program that you've set here. Things like mentorship responsibilities. So if you are coaching other coaches to be better coaches, that could be inside Coastal or at the process programming, running merchandise. What else we got?
Running events. And I think overall a theme of that is that if you find ways to bring management responsibilities and
that align with the mission of the business.
Exactly. Then that is your management responsibility. Like we only created our current level 3 management responsibilities based off of the services and offerings we currently have, which are what you listed. But it's like, if someone wanted to move up a level, all they would have to do is like, well, I really love doing this. It aligns with the business and I know I can make it successful. Perfect. Now you can move up a level is basically it.
Yeah. A big part of all this has been like, prove it, like show us, like come to us with ideas, help us together grow this thing, impact more people. Yeah.
And then we go to our level 2 coaches, which have 1 or more responsibilities. And this also includes like writing a group class program. That's mainly the one we have right now because we have multiple group class programs in Coastal as well as in the process programming. We have other things like athlete check-ins because that's what we do in the process. We have Coastal member check-ins. We have content creation because we're an online business. So we strongly believe that's something that people need to put time to do. I would beg and beg and beg people to create content for me because I'm like, we're an online business. We need to put out online content. But everyone was like, we don't have time to do that. That's the least of our priorities, which I completely understand. So now it's actually a job responsibility is to create educational content, which we can see has come to fruition so well now that people have the time, energy, and creative space to do that.
And then we go to our level 1s.
Yeah.
So essentially our level 1s are people, generally speaking, who are a bit newer in the industry. And they don't have any job responsibilities outside of just coaching. Like I really, really believe the way that I got into coaching was like, you need to work your ass off. You need to be in the trenches. You need to experience hard work. You need to train a whole bunch of different people. And essentially that's what the role of, or the job responsibilities, of our level 1 coaches are. Just get experience. And in that time, show us what else you can do. Most of our level 1 coaches, we don't know where their talents and their passions lie outside of coaching, because for them, they just need to be better coaches right now. And that's what we want their sole responsibility to be. We've asked them and said, one of your responsibilities is actually to step up outside of coaching, do the kind of thankless unpaid work, be an assistant to your level 2 and level 3 coaches, like create new avenues of business, come forward to the table with new ideas. And what that will then allow us as managers to do is identify. And these level 1 coaches actually have talents outside of just coaching, and when the time is right, when they've proved themselves, when they've meet their KPIs, that's another thing we have to talk about. If they can consistently meet and exceed their KPIs, at some point I want to be able to graduate a level 1 coach or level 2, give them responsibilities outside of coaching. And so I think the KPIs thing is a really important thing to talk about. It's like, well, how do you govern whether someone is doing their job? And this is something that we never really had before. Before it was just like, be a good coach, do a good job, live by our values, and you ultimately have the choice on how hard you want to work each month. That was basically it. We didn't have any minimums, we didn't have any maximums. But now, in order to, I guess, manage a new system like this, you have to have clear responsibilities, and those responsibilities have to be measurable somehow. So KPIs, this is something brand new for us, is that each coach has a number of KPIs that align with job responsibilities, and each month we will sit down with them as managers and basically like assess, like, are we hitting our responsibilities? And we know that in order for this thing to be successful, in order for us to impact the lives we want to impact, and in order for us to continue to grow financially as a business, we have to be hitting those KPIs. And the harsh reality of this now is that people are not going to hit their KPIs. And we're seeing that already. You know, people are falling short of those KPIs. And when that happens, like, there's going to have to be hard conversations. You know, repeatedly falling behind on your KPIs is going to mean that perhaps you're not the right person for this job. And as a business, we're going to have to make that decision to find either someone else or provide this person with more resources so they can make that job. And that's, you know, in the coaching world sounds so harsh. It sounds corporate, but essentially, like, that's where we have to move to now. We can't, you know, give people this amazing flexibility to have freedom to, you know, do the things they really want without actually being on top of things to making sure people are actually doing the job. Because at the end of the day, you know, one of the biggest catalysts for all of this is that the business has to survive, and we need people to do their jobs.
Yeah, so when we created the levels, we also created salaries that were reflective of each level, right? And in order to do that, we had to look at minimum required coaching hours for each coach to do. And that, I think, is the biggest KPI that we need to hit, because that's a direct revenue for the business. And so as you go up a level, you have less required coaching hours because you have more management responsibilities. So we also had to, and this was a lot of work for us, like we had to meticulously find and crunch the numbers that were a sweet spot between how much a coach needed to work one-on-one hours, but how much freedom we could give them and how much management salary they could have on top of that, right? And like you said, it's a ball game. Like, we took a huge risk as a company to expect people to hit these coaching hours, to expect people to hit these KPIs that eventually will bring in revenue that are paying their fixed salaries. Because not anymore is it, if you're a low month, that's okay, because that means you're only paying a low salary. It's no, now salaries are fixed on low or high months. So we need everyone to step up. And like you said, it's really just finding the right people for the right job. And I think what's most difficult is people are still finding themselves, and we can't expect that everybody just knows who they are and what they want to do as soon as we changed, and how to do it as soon as we changed into these fixed salaries. So it's like, yes, it is a risk for the business in the beginning, but like we keep telling ourselves, like we keep telling our board and our employees, like, we're all taking a step back financially, yes, because we couldn't give everybody what they earned on their best month. That just is not possible. Everybody had to take a little bit of a salary step back, but that's because we said to everybody, prove yourselves, bring further revenue into the business now that you have more free time and ability to do so, and then we'll all exponentially grow from there. And what the beautiful thing about it is that now our revenue and our salaries are not capped. It's infinite in relation to the amount of money that we can bring back. So it's no longer just focused on the coaching hour revenue that we can bring in. But if we have an online business, or if we have seminars, or we have merchandise, we have events that bring so much more money back into the business than a 1 hour PT session can do, then we're all going to grow. All our salaries, we can't even see a limit to that right now. It just depends on how much we're all able to grow as people. And I think we keep having to say that. Sometimes I find myself being like, really, we're saying this conversation again? But that's something we just have to do, because we're making change. And like you've had to remind me so much, is that when people are so used to one way of life for years and years and years, and now we're drastically asking them to change, like that's something that's going to take a while to actually sink in and for us to actually succeed, right?
Yeah, and I said it to all the people that are part of this change. It's like, you are the unfortunate ones that are pioneering this change, because in years to come, you know, it's going to be the way that we do it. And it's like, people are going to be coming to this organization because they know the structure, they know how things are done, and going to be able to slide straight in. But, you know, unfortunately, the people that are part of this organization, myself and yourself included, like, have gone from one system and are now having to jump into the unknown, to something they've never done before, take a bit of a pay cut, have brand new responsibilities, have KPIs that they have to hit. There's a lot of pressure now and a lot of uncertainty, because what we've also said is that we're not sure if it's going to be successful. Like, I'm 99% sure that this is a change that our business had to do, because we were stagnant. We couldn't grow beyond what we were currently doing in terms of mission and in terms of finances. And so what we said to everyone is that this next 3 months is going to be about sliding into our new roles, learning everything that we can, building foundations. So at the 3 month mark, that's where we have to really see big change. And what we're already seeing is some of the, leaders inside a month already starting to see an impact on revenue. They've now, with the time and the clear responsibilities they have, we're starting to see like our group memberships growing again. We're starting to see some of our online programs starting to grow a little bit more. We're starting to see the mentors who are looking after our level 1 coaches do a great job in seeing, increasing standards from our level 1 coaches, and that has an immediate knock-on effect on their ability to coach individual clients and group clients. But for the most of it, like we've said, this is going to look like a hockey stick.
Yeah.
For the next 3 months, we're probably going to, worst case scenario, lose a bit of money as we're creating and building these new foundations. But we're going to see hopefully exponential increase in the long run as we create these other revenue sources. We build these new aspects of business. We create these new leaders. And, in turn, we can continue to bring in level 1 coaches to continue to grow and learn. I think something that's worth mentioning is that within these levels that we created, it's a highly individualized contract.
Yeah.
So, within each level, there are pay ranges. So we have kind of a lower end of the pay range and we have an upper end of the pay range. We have benefit ranges. Job responsibilities can vary greatly from person to person. So in creating these contracts, we had to really individualize every single one of them. And this is going to be something that will be individualized probably forever.
Yeah.
As we start to identify, what people can bring to the business. And so what the coaches have now is they know that within their bracket, let's say a level 2 coach, if they're currently the bottom end of the bracket, they don't necessarily have to graduate to become a level 3 coach to see increased financial, earnings. They can actually continue. They have loads of scope to earn more money and take on responsibilities within the level 2 bracket. And at some point, we want to be able to pay these people bonuses.
Yeah.
Like, we want these people to be crushing their jobs so much that it's like, you brought in all this extra revenue and business and impact for us in the last month. I want to just give you a little bit of a reward to say thank you so much. And we're essentially saying to people, it's like, to continue to grow within your roles, you need to exceed your expectations. So the KPIs we've set with them together.
Mm-hmm.
Like, guys, you tell us, what are you going to achieve in the next year? Let's set those things together. Like, they can't be easy and attainable. They have to be somewhat lofty, but realistic. And if you can exceed those or hit them every single month, there's no question in our eyes that you deserve to grow, whatever that means for you. And we want to make that happen.
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, it's a really great change that will greatly benefit the business and each individual as a person. It just takes time, like I said, to go from what you used to know to and what worked for you selfishly and to now what is better for everybody else. I think that also going from being accountable to just yourself to now being accountable to other people, because we said that we're setting reviews, not just anymore how well you look to yourself as the managing director, but to your clients and to the other people in your team. And I think that's a huge one for us now, is that we need people who are just generally good people, and that's how you then are warranted an increase in your salary or in your level, right? And I think that accountability is actually so beneficial, because now we're working as a team. We're no longer working as 10 individuals. We're working as one team towards the same goal, and that's what's going to create the biggest wave of change and ripple effect to everyone else. And like I said, today was one of those days where it's so exciting to see all of these things actually working, but it's not like today every day. It was just yesterday when I was like crying to you, being like, this is so hard, I don't know if I can do this, right? So it's going to be up and down. It's going to be trial and error. Like I said, what works for us won't necessarily work for everyone else. It's a lot of time on the managers and leaders, because we need to set individual contracts. We need to do monthly reviews with every single one of our coaches to make sure that they're actually moving in the direction. Every week I have to look at the numbers to see if we're hitting our coaching hour requirements and our KPIs. We need to also always monitor our membership numbers, because those little things is what's going to make it successful. It's not as easy as, everyone's on fixed salaries, all is good and well. It's not at all.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was most exciting for me is when we created this change. On day one, I stepped into this office in the morning, and I saw, 2 coaches at the whiteboard, brainstorming these crazy ideas. Someone else in a meeting with you, thinking about marketing. Someone else meeting with another coach about their project. And then, a week later, everyone being like, oh my God, I'm so exhausted. Like, this management shit's really hard. Yeah. And as empathetic as I was like, this is great. You know, this is how I felt for so long.
Yeah.
I felt so alone. Like, honestly, felt so alone and isolated that it's like, wow, like, look at that. In a day, now I have a team of essentially me now, you know, who are like, think how much we're going to create. Think how much impact we're going to have now. That there's a whole team of us brainstorming, creatively thinking, creating these amazing ideas. And some of the ideas that we've seen in such a short amount of time have been amazing. Like, I would have never come up with those ideas. And I'm seeing skill sets in people that I never knew existed. I'm even seeing skill sets in you that I didn't know existed now that your roles and responsibilities are becoming more defined. So, you know, I'm still so totally on board, and I want to continue to, you know, update our listeners as the story unfolds. And again, if people have questions, or they want to just check in and see how things are going, like, of course, I'll share absolutely everything. You know, what we said before this podcast is like, we're not afraid to share like the trials and tribulations of this business. Like, it's important people know about it. It provides context to why we're making these changes. You know, and I think just the last thing that people always ask me is like, well, why did you stay in Hong Kong? And I think sometimes it's a hard question to answer, but I do say, you know, the great thing about being in Hong Kong is that it forces you to run a good business. Like, you can't just rely on running a half-assed business with shoddy practices and no systems and expect to grow. And, you know, I always see these years as like my learning years. And, you know, people will say you've been doing it for 14 years, but I'm still learning so much as a business leader and a business owner that it's like, I know at some point we'll probably transition out of here. Or, you know, if we strike luck somehow and we are able to get a nice big facility and pay half the rent, then maybe we might stay. But, you know, you're still using these years as a chance for building foundations, building our brand, building our reputation, creating connections around the world. And then who knows what opportunities will present themselves in the future.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Izzy, thank you so much for your time and for sharing all your wonderful thoughts and stories.
Thank you.
Till next time.
Bye.